As it is a brand new year, happy New Year's, everybody. Being 2011, this last week, obviously in the world of professional wrestling, kind of all seem to theme upon ending the year of 2010 and bringing in the new year of 2011. Um, Many attempts of seeing what to expect, but let's face it, it's the start of a brand new year. Both TNA and WWE, we're probably going to see a lot of departures, and we'll see a lot of superstar signings, but that's just things to come. Hello, once again, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of John's Wrestling Views. I'm your host, John. What a way to end 2010 and start the year 2011 this week in professional wrestling. TNA didn't seem like, to me, it was really messaged around that. It was more or less just saying, hey, we're getting ready for Genesis because it's just a week and a half away. As the Impact main event this week was Matt Morgan and Mr. Anderson in a tag team match against each other where they were going to figure out who their partners were. It ended up being that Mr. Anderson's partner, of course, was Bully Ray, of course, Brother Ray from Team 3D. And Matt Morgan's partner was then, of course, Brother Devon, as they were clearly just wanting to stir two rivalries into one match, which you'll find at any show, any time, as they're getting ready for a pay-per-view, that they'll generally do that with their match card. Wasn't that exciting of a match. They're still trying to pull off this whole angle of Anderson has a concussion, and is he cleared to wrestle or not. It's weird on multiple levels. Now, for those of you who did see that chair shot that Jeff Hardy gave to Mr. Anderson a number of months ago, yeah, it was a legit concussion. That was a real cut there. It was gruesome. But now they're just kind of playing off of it. Is Anderson really hurt? Well, if he really was, he wouldn't even be in these matches right now. So let's face it, it's just all leading up to something at Genesis. Let's see if Mr. Anderson or Matt Morgan wins that match. I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things where you sit back and you watch and you see. But the storyline doesn't really appeal to me much. It's a way to bring him back, Mick Foley, yes. Even then saying, oh, I've had my fair share of concussions, and I did the wrong thing by continuing to compete. And that's what Mr. Anderson's doing right now. I don't really like Mick Foley's involvement with this rivalry, as it was a complete opposite of how Mick Foley was in his wrestling days. It's kind of hard to take advice from him when that's all he did. He'd have a concussion, he would fall off a cell and separate his shoulder or whatever, and he'd continue to wrestle. How's that then going to set the example for yourself when you're saying, oh, you shouldn't be wrestling when you have a concussion because I learned the hard way? Well, Foley's a wrestling legend because of what he did. Where can Mr. Anderson go? The knockouts kind of disappointed. You have Velvet Sky and Sarita in a strap match. One would think, oh, this is going to draw in ratings. The only ratings I would see it drawing in is those men in the audience who are like, man, these girls are hot. Yeah, I want to see women wrestling, but no, the match itself, really lame. To me, just setting up another angle with this new tag team partnership with Angelina Love and Winter, who was formerly known as Katie Lee back in WWE, for those of you who don't know. So yeah, let's see where it goes from here. It was kind of a disappointing Impact altogether to end the year 2010. Like I said, it seemed like what was leading up to 2011 with TNA was their episode of Reaction, as they kind of did the year in review, as they talked about, obviously, Immortal and EV2 and Fortune quite a bit, and then what 2011 brings. Obviously, it's on every superstar's list that they have more of a breakthrough year in 2011 or any New Year's than they did the year prior to that. Which brings me to the WWE side of things. Wow. Great week for them. Friday was, of course, New Year's Eve, so this was New Year's Eve version episode of SmackDown. And it delivered, it was weird that their headline match, Kane and Alberto Del Rio versus Rey Mysterio and Edge, and a tag match was a mid-carder. But, it wasn't that bad a match, of course, seeing Edge and Mysterio getting the victory. But it led to Theodore Long's announcement of next week, the two matches we'll see with Alberto Del Rio facing Rey Mysterio in a 2 out of 3 falls match, and Edge defending the world title against Kane in a last man standing match. Obviously, it's wanting to deliver for it being the first SmackDown of the year. The last match of the year, though, in any WWE show for this year was, of course, the triple threat match for the Intercontinental title that saw Dolph Ziggler defending it against Kofi Kingston and Jack Swagger. Standout match, definitely. WWE.com just recently created its top 25 matches of 2010 list, and I really feel that if they actually went through all of 2010, keeping in mind every single match they did instead of stopping sometime before the TLC pay-per-view, this match very well could have made that top 25 list. It wouldn't be high up on the list, but it'd definitely make a spot, as it did still see Dolph Ziggler stealing one in the end and remaining Intercontinental Champion. So you end with a bang, you start off with a bang. Monday Night Raw this Monday, people tuned in for two reasons. One was to see what kind of ideas were going to be brought to the CM Punk Nexus John Cena storyline, as that is the main news in WWE right now. And the other being John Morrison. He beat Sheamus in the ladder match at TLC. He announced that it was going to be himself versus The Miz in a Falls Count Anywhere match next week on Raw. He said that last week, which brought us to last Monday's Raw. And so, hey, let's start the show off with this. And me as a viewer, I'm like, why are you putting a WWE title match first? This is main event quality here. Granted, The Miz will probably win, but why first? And it clicked, Let's start the new year off with a bang. And they did exactly that. And John Morrison, being the breakout star through the whole match, did not get the job done, as it was seen as a critical point in the match. And literally a great way to start the new year off with a bang is that table was set up on the outside of the ring, and Morrison placed Miz on top of it and was going for a Starship Pain off the top rope just for the Miz to roll out of the way. Morrison hitting Starship Pain on nobody through a table, and Miz capitalizing with the skull-crushing finale, winning the match and retaining the WWE Championship. Great way to kick off the new year. And then, if it's our first show, let's make it a good show. The other headlining match being, first it was a surprise of who the three contestants would be, but it was a steel cage match to determine the number one contender for WWE Championship to face The Miz at the Royal Rumble between Randy Orton, Wade Barrett, and King Sheamus. Obviously, the common wrestling fan would think Randy Orton would win, him being the only face in the match, especially when Miz is a WWE champion who's a heel. But then they put another interesting twist on it, is if Wade Barrett won, he would be the rightful leader still of the Nexus, and CM Punk would just follow his leadership. But if Wade Barrett lost, he'd be removed from Nexus, and CM Punk will be the rightful leader of Nexus. And of course it showed in the end CM Punk attempting to give Wade Barrett a hand climbing up over the cage wall, as the only way to win was through escape. But in reality what it was just tearing off that Nexus armband from Wade Barrett, essentially removing him from Nexus, as it is now CM Punk's Nexus. And then of course Orton capitalized on Sheamus with an RKO and kind of an interesting ending there, as Randy Orton's new per se and his pursuit in his character is he's not going to show as much remorse. He's not going to hold back as much. He's the Viper, and he's going to strike without any remorse, without holding back at all. And that's what he did. And now Orton will face The Miz once again at the Royal Rumble for WWE Championship. The way I see it is they're looking to continue the John Cena CM Punk rivalry through WrestleMania. John Cena, has a bit of a hip injury right now. So be expecting him to be cutting promos when he is there the next few weeks, maybe being able to compete in the Royal Rumble match. Don't expect either him or Punk to win. They'll just be a headliner at WrestleMania, but not the main event. As for Wade Barrett, the way I see it, if I recall, under Wade Barrett's leadership, Nexus removed a guy called The Undertaker. at bragging rights, Undertaker's not going to miss WrestleMania no matter how hurt he is. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if, let's say, we see an Undertaker return coming up soon, whether it be in the Royal Rumble match or at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, whenever. But I'm thinking just because Wade Barrett's done with Nexus doesn't mean what happened under Wade Barrett's ruling as leader of Nexus is done with, as they probably would set up for an Undertaker-Wade Barrett match at WrestleMania. Will Wade Barrett break the undefeated streak of the Undertakers? Highly doubtful. I'm expecting that if the two of them, especially if the two of them fight, we'll definitely see Undertaker end up being 19-0 on the greatest stage of them all in professional wrestling, WrestleMania. But until next week, thank you for tuning in. I'm John. Have a good one.